The world is very different now. For man holds in his mortal hand the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life.
It begins a very special time of the year for us. It's the time of peace and reflection. One thing we should all be thankful for is that we live in America, where we have the freedom to change things and the opportunity to grow.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
That you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
And will, to the best of your ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Well, do you say hello or do I? Because this is crazy. We're live streaming together.
Simulcast, dude. Don't cross the streams. We did it
Thank you for
anyway.
showing me how this is possible. So apparently you can stream to two places at once. This is super meta. And I got to stream for my first live simul stream. Got to do it with like the most metaphysical UFOologist person of the world, Jeremy Reese.
This
It's
is it.
amazing.
This is inside the black hole in the back
Oh my
box, dude, of how we did it.
So there's chat. The chat should include chats from people in my channel and people from your channel, and they're like thrust together.
I'll take this off so people can actually see it. But yeah, it's pretty cool. We can you can co-host through StreamYard, which is awesome. It's a great feature. But I want to get into this UFO video because we were just on Adam Krigler's show
Dude,
just a
say
little while
Make
ago.
sure you guys watch that. It's amazing.
Go back to Adam Krigler's channel, definitely, and Adam Krigler show, and I was just on there about halfway through or so. I don't know.
Is your phone by your like? I hear clicking. I wonder if it's like the 5G. Clicks.
Dude, it's pouring rain here in Rhode Island right now.
Oh, there it is.
That's what you're hearing is
Wow.
the torrential downpours. Actually, I have these pictures that I posted on Twitter of the flooding here
Oh my God.
in Rhode Island, in Providence today. So people can see just, how crazy. That was the abandoned car right in the middle there. Some people drove into this. Is right on in the flood zone coming back up 95 on I think this is Turber Ave
This is crazy.
exit. I'm not sure. It looks like that. Either that or this is Route 10.
So definitely no geoengineering or weather control going on, right? Or what do you think about that?
No, there's definitely no global warming or I don't know, man. That's what they'll say it is, right? I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, this was a good one. So this is a good quote. In any case,
Great theater is about challenging how we think and encouraging us to fantasize about a world we aspire to.
yes. So the world we aspire to is whatever this technology is, and whatever the heck people think that they're seeing out there. This video has kind of made some viral headlines, and there were some complaints that the scientific community is not taking this stuff seriously, and not enough of them are. And no, there are a number of scientists taking this stuff seriously and looking into it. And you're watching some of them, and I have some interesting perspectives.
Yeah,
that were offered. So I have
elaborate us. What are we looking at here? Is this Venus? I mean, is that a UFO? Is that a fairy? What do we
Here's
got?
an email I'll share from this morning too about this from Travis Taylor. You could screenshot that. But this is allegedly a cube within a sphere. But there are a number of things about this, and I'll read off what Travis Taylor says in this email while people can be entertained and awed by the video. Dr. Travis Taylor, of course, was the guy from Rocket City Rednecks and Skinwalker Ranch, and he was the head investigator for Brandon Fugel on the recent Skinwalker Ranch TV series, and he was also apparently one of the scientists that was headed up by this Pentagon's UFO program and whatnot, who was revealed recently. But anyways, he says, I don't know the chain of custody of the video, and I don't know what it is. That said, from the video alone, there are some issues I'd like to address. And he gives 8 points. Number one is the sphere on this 2D plane of the focal plane array is an 8-sided polygon or octagon. It's not a circle, which suggests it's an artifact of the camera iris. So if you use, remember that triangular bokeh video? Because you can fake with the triangular apertures.
Right.
Well, turns out if you use a square or octagonal aperture, you can get a similar effect on a point light source.
That makes sense. It's like quantified, like the pixel breakup is going to make a curve.
Hint, Mick West. I'm just waiting for Mick West to get the camera and do the square one now and show this. But
you might have to elaborate too, because some of the people on my channel don't know any of these guys. So explain what Mick West did and why. He's. I'm scared to say relevant.
These low level UFO cases and really just showing people like, hey, this is not what's that's not the better time. We get our scientists. It's interesting that our scientists are taking the time to address these things, and that's useful. I'm glad that they're doing that, and they offer some great suggestions. We'll get into the rest of this. So we have to just appreciate that. But again, I think it's almost like a waste of their talent and time sometimes. But if that's what it turns out to be, that was like the first thing he says. So that's going to be the first test that needs to be done. And of course, Mick West is the guy that does all the videos and tests and shows this stuff and then shows how to fake, certain art. He shows how to fake a lot of stuff with UFO videos. And I don't know if he's so good at it. Maybe he should go into the business of it, because it seems like the people promoting these fakes are getting more views and more attention on.
Dude, remember the guys? The guys who did the fake crop circles to show how you could do fake crop circles, and everyone was like, "You're gonna make more money. Don't tell us how you do it. Just go do it." And he's like, "That's the opposite of what I was trying to." Yeah.
That's it. So number 2 is the octagon gets thicker and thinner as the focus changes. It does. Well, the central cube in the 2D FPA does appear cubish. It's in 2D. It's a sphere. I mean, it's a square and a horseshoe as the focus is tightened, and it looks like an undersampled circle. Interesting. Yeah. From 1 to 3, this suggests the actual pattern of the FPA is a. I'm gonna share this email in the upper right, because he gives some math, and an Airy disk with a d.c.stop. I don't know what the heck. And I don't know what this notation is. A circle of R squared minus the circle. So the BE sign. Is this bracket? I don't know what the heck kind of notation this is or what he's referring to here. Referred to an
circumference of pi squared.
So this is an optics formula. I really should take an advanced optics course and learn some of this math.
But they're talking about like the diffraction of light off the radius of the curve. Is that what that R squared is in that?
I got to get him on, man. It'd be great to get him to. But
this is interesting because we see this. We see this stuff, and from a visual perspective, it's important to remember we're no longer worried just about our eyes tricking us. It's also about our instruments tricking us. And it's so easy for that to happen. We need to know what's really going on with light capturing, and especially if something is at some weird frequency or has its own power density, because it could be a light that's beyond what we're able to perceive, even with our equipment.
So the question is there other data? Yeah, with no other data, we can be it can be quickly explained away as optical stuff in the camera. It's basically the conclusion. And the question is there other data? So I just kind of rushed through this. So there's certainly, some e to the I lambda stuff terms missing and such, but this is the general physics optics of the video out of context. This is cool. The actual object is likely a point source, a very, very long way off so as to be a plane wave by the time it hits the circular aperture. This is the cause of the Besinc in the math. The Besinc in the math. I gotta look.
Maybe it's like a laser that's hitting. Maybe one of Google's laser-powered internets that's hitting.
This is where when you get some stuff like this, and you don't ignore these boring, details.
Hey,
Sometimes you get some interesting physics. So what the heck is a Besinc? Optics, physics. Let's reduce our. Okay, Besinc, basic law of optics. Is that what this is? Is that what he's talking about? Besinc in the math. Is it Besinc of r minus the circle of r squared? An Airy disk. What is Airy disk? With a d.c.stop. Well, these technical terms are key, and they're going to lead us to some technical information. And so an Airy disk is the diffraction pattern of a spotlight. Yeah, so this is you take a point source of light, and through different apertures, it can create these, Fresnel effects and other things, which is super interesting. All right, so that's
right. I mean, you got all these people talking about luminaries, and here's an example of something saying, "Hey, maybe the luminary you're seeing is coming from a unidirectional laser." I mean, he said, right, there's from a point.
So he said d.c.stop, so I'm going to search for stop. No Christopher, no, there's no thing. So let's look up Airy disk. We'll go back to Airy disk and we'll type in d.c.stop. I don't know what the d.c.stop is, but it's obviously important, or he wouldn't have mentioned it.
Right. Let me see what I can find on Besinc.
Yeah, it's got to be in a textbook on optics, and I'll have to do some deep dive because I have a whole bunch of textbooks.
I'm finding a couple things on multi-device video synchronization but that could be something else. But the ability to synchronize. So in old systems, you'd have to have some sort of a governor to make sure that each frame happened at the exact same stop. So if you're having different conditions over a long period, it might affect the actual wave.
A d.c.stop. A d.c.stop optics. Let's just look up d.c.stop.
Yeah.
Optics. See what comes up. This is a piece of equipment. What is this? DC coupled electro-optic phase shifter.
Interesting.
Well, maybe he's just dropping like knowledge and hints to this is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so if you could have a DC generator or some sort of a flipping ionic flipping device that, let's extrapolate what a generator is and have it actually work with photons, if that even is a real thing. I mean, I don't mean to go full Ken Wheeler, but if you've got if they're flowing, is it really a flow or is it just a vibration? So a vibration wouldn't be alternating, it would be direct.
Well, there's a vibration is interesting, but there's a net movement. So there is flow, and but this is interesting. If there's a net movement, like AC, pure AC is just 180 degree out of phase, and
yeah, it's garnishing a field instead.
But this is transfer optic device. This is what this has to do with I got to get him on to, break this down a little better because I'm not following.
I'm interested to learn more about phase shifting. I think phase shifters are very, the idea of creating a pulsing field is interesting because you could have a flicker to your field, which would, it actually pushes out, which is how in general waves are pushing the ELF band up and pushing, what is it called? Radioactive ions from radioactive explosions that we've had have been pushed up just because of the bouncing. So a phase shift, if you did it on a small scale, could probably be used to create current flow.
Okay, so he's talking about this math. This is these Bessel functions, much like a Fourier series breaks down all like an analog frequency into a bunch of digital parts. It's kind of like this transform that takes a weighted sum of an infinite number of Bessel functions of the first kind.
Right.
So these are Bessel functions.
Wow.
We zoom in more. These little plate vibrations.
Did you command
very similar to like a Chladni plate in those cymatic,
if you push Control T, it should be able to let you increase the size of the map.
So you can do a lot of modeling of this type of
or Control Plus. Sorry, not T.
Control Plus or Command Plus. I'm on at Mac.
Yeah, Command Plus. That'll do it. There you go. And good for you.
So this looks very similar to what we see with a Chladni plate. Like these these cymatic waveforms that occur in sand on these plates.
Yeah, subwoofer fun.
It's very interesting because a lot of these atomic models follow mathematics and curves, and functions very similar to what we observe in these confined region vibrational atmospheres or vibrational mediums. Whether it's a atomic shell resonant structure of an electron bound to a nucleus, or a bunch of electrons bound in shells to a nucleus.
Right.
It's very similar to a lot of these a lot of the mathematics for that people explore to explain some of the stuff. I wish I could it's just an infinite amount of stuff to learn, and then add.
It's cool to show things you're wrestling with, also how you look up stuff. It helps people look up stuff if they know how to search for terms. I mean, hey, you start with a word you've never heard before and try to put it into context.
Well, this is good because you learn new stuff all the time by listening to these scientists and getting these types of emails and then seeing what they know and what they talk about, because they've been exposed to a whole bunch of different stuff that you haven't, and they often know stuff, so it helps to pay attention to this. But some of it's some of this seems like this seems interesting, but then this is like flabbergasting. It's just like some really complicated math, which I don't understand how this really relates, without a diagram, showing kind of what he's talking about.
And how it affects our perspective, our perception.
Yeah, because this is about this video. This is back, we just took like a 30-minute detour into the physics and of this post, but it really was about this this stupid video on Twitter by UAP Live that of this cube within a sphere that he wanted to talk about. And this the other interesting thing, there's I don't know if you know about this, but I interviewed this guy. He's an Area 51 veteran named T.D. Barnes, Theodore Ted Barnes.
Oh yeah.
And he was a special projects engineer out at Area 51, and he thinks that all this is like top secret technologies, and that none of the stuff in the mainstream media is the real deal, and that a lot of the real secret programs are not talked about. But he talks about this one of Project Palladium and these weather balloon, this balloon, all these balloon projects and stuff that they were a lot of those were mistaken for UFOs back in the 50s and 60s and stuff, including the CIA's Skyhook program and some of these other balloons. But what's this one? The Project Palladium balloon. It's not there. It's not there. It's on the drive, and it's this. I have to look up here.
Project false fleets from drone swarms, so you could see in the sky fake ships approaching, and you think, oh yeah, they're coming from that direction. That's pretty good.
Yeah, there's all these electronic warfare programs where they can totally fake out the enemy, and they're talking about these adversary drones that are spying on us and using all this advanced technology, combinations of varieties of advanced technology, including a lot of laser hypersonics. Because I talk about this whole. I talked about last night on my program. I talked about this Project Outgrowth, and Project Outgrowth was basically the scientists that they hired when they closed Project Blue Book, and they were trying to outgrow the old military ways and some of the old stuff, and trying to come up with new ideas, and trying to recruit some new people. And some of the new people that they recruited are very interesting, including the guy who started the first, laser study that was done out at Air Force Research Labs in the early 70s. So this guy, Arthur Kantrowitz. And I went and we looked up Arthur Kantrowitz and found out some interesting things about him last night in our deep dive, that he was, he graduated from, DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx.
Wow, that's shield with that one there, yeah.
That's pretty interesting. It's an old school high school. It's opened in 1897, all boys school. It's like a small little Bronx all boys school. We're at Columbia University and Cornell. He went on to teach there, but he did a lot of this work on high powered lasers, and also I think ramjet and scramjet engines, which those were all the hype during the 90s about these advanced like the SR-71 and these advanced jet engines that were going to bring the thing. But this guy, he wrote this whole paper on the Kantrowitz limit, which we were looking up last night. It came up on his Wikipedia page, and it was about. And I mentioned this because I had heard about this before, but it was interesting to find the actual scientist's name and then trace him back to the project in the early 70s that grew out of after the aftermath of Project Blue Book.
Yeah, because there's all this talk about there being a second, more I don't know if real's the word, but definitely you look at these.
We're trying to chase all the science. I think I told people the key is in the scientists, and if you want to find the scientists that were involved in the classified research, you're going to have to dig into this stuff and find these names and do FOIAs and get more information on their scientific work and really do the deep dives on their scientific work if you want to find the real intel.
Hey, look at this. We got a comment. Bob Lazar says, wow, this guy has a bad attitude.
So, yeah, well, Kantrowitz is a badass. This is another Bob Lazar. If there was a Bob Lazar type, people, these are, I'm tracking them down and putting them on the
there's
radar.
All these 60-year-old men that are living in New Mexico or Colorado that used to be somebody.
God, we gotta find them all, man. That's why I want to. The other thing is, I was encouraging people to post, ads up in the VA hospitals. That's where you'll find UFO. If there's crash teams out there and people that are survived off them, they're going to be in those VA homes. And I don't know. I hope the CIA doesn't, take note of that and get to them first. Put out the
bummer.
They're going to put out the honey traps first. But yeah, this is the real channel for that, and encourage people to, always.
Go for the real data. Yeah.
Get with the real data.
you'll find data and you're like, hey, I don't know what this is. Let's look through this together and figure out what it's about.
Let me get back to this whole physics point, because this is really interesting. This Kantrowitz limit is what they determined was what basically they gave up on in any type of inlet propulsion or jet propulsion, and they said, the next future are these darts. these darts that they were developing, that they could, you know, affect the streamlined flow of the air around it. And there were ways to produce, you know, directed energy or fields that would emanate off the nose cones of these things that could affect that and the flow rate to get that, you know. And they talk about this Mach 1 mass flow rate, and it's limited, and then how to get, you know, beyond, way beyond that. And he also did some consulting on, you know, Hyperloop for Elon Musk as well, which they you know, used this physics to, you know, basically prove that, hey, you know, you're not going to be able to do these things. And but man, it's a shame he died in 2008.
Wow.
At 95, heart attack. And but he did you know, undeniable contributions to science. But he's, again, you know, it's all aliens.
Yeah, no, so that's a question I've got. So, you know, you've gone through a lot of ufology and debunked it. You've proven that a lot of the stuff people really hold on to is true, is, you know, as Bigfoot footage isn't
Well,
the
there's no
actual
hard proof. It's not that, you know, like, I'm looking for the actual intelligence, which is like, you
right.
know, we need a craft, or we need like the program, the recovery teams, and there's people on UFO Twitter teasing those out in front of the community right now, and they've been doing that recently, you know, talking about all these whistleblowers that are going to come forward, including some credible sources, believe it or not. You know, one of the people that allegedly worked on it and was mentioned in, you know, American Cosmic, which is a book that was you know, published I think 2019 by Diane Walsh Pasulka, and she went to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and she was like doing some, like, you know, research on the history of the school or something. I got to get the whole story from her, because I had reached out to her, but she's getting on she was on Lex Friedman and a couple big other big shows, so she's probably doesn't really, like, I'm not on her radar because I'm buddy or whatever, and that's okay.
You're doing all right,
You
actually.
wanna talk to me, and I have some friends that are pretty abrasive sometimes, and guests.
I think smart people can be pretty abrasive, because when you know something and someone else likes to say, I think it could be like this, but you know, what someone thinks about it has no bearing on what's true. It can be really hard not to be abrasive.
But anyways, she went to this University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which was coincidentally a university that was chosen because there was a really great team of physics professors that were that worked there, named Bryce and Cecil Dewitt, husband and wife physics team that did some really interesting classified, you know, government research work alongside guys like John Archibald Wheeler and other stuff all throughout the 60s. So this is where we've, you know, if you get into the end of Project Blue Book, it kind of culminated, I believe, with their pivotal work on if you look up Bryce Dewitt and John Archibald Wheeler, two other scientists who did a lot of classified, you know, real physics research for the government. This basically comprised the secret college. This was the secret college. I seen this photo. It's so great to have the full photo, because this part has been cropped out so many times and they don't show.
Interesting.
Dewitt and actually, is that Dewitt? Conzes von Wheeler. It doesn't really look like Bryce Dewitt. This is Bryce Dewitt right here. But anyways, they published and John Archibald Wheeler, they published an article for Battelle. Believe it or not, Battelle put on this whole prestigious, you know, thing of scientists, and they published this document, which 1967 lectures in mathematics. I think this is Battelle Memorial Institute. I don't know. Like, is this the same Battelle? Like, I don't know. It seems like a big company funded this.
Interesting.
But inside it talks about Lie theory and this hyperdimensionality and this new view of physics that might be these really interesting views of physics that are now like emerging, you know, 30 years later after physics was sent on this this massive derailment with string theory and all these other theories. They got lost in mathematics, and that was part due to Ed Witten's contribution. And interesting that his father was one of this. His father was a member of this secret college. His father, Joseph Witten, was a theoretical physicist, Johns Hopkins University, Princeton, and at Princeton, he worked alongside John Archibald Wheeler on, and he was and apparently did a lot of this theoretical, this foundational gravity research. So he was since 1968, he's been vice president and director of science affairs for the Gravity Research Foundation. So this is like this. If there was a secret government trying to keep anti-gravity from the masses, this would be it. That's what some people have said, but it's also like one of the most prestigious places that tries to look into this.
Right.
But they ignore a lot of other stuff, and they go with this. I don't know. It's
something I was looking at recently was the Geophysical Year Committee, right? So I had a fan and a friend who sent me a bunch of information on the Geophysical Year, and some of the stuff that you get into is like, well, when did the Geophysical Year matter? Well, the International Polar Years of 1882, their society continued on to create the International Geophysical Year and then the International Council of Scientific Unions. And so during the time when we thought the Soviet Union was supposed to be totally not working with the US or anything like that, of course we were. At least on certain scientific enterprises.
Yeah, it's interesting. You go back and look through all this, and I'm just trying to trace back more of these physicists and link them to the secret programs that they might have been involved in, and what happened when. Because it just looks like they did this Battelle Rencontres. They determined all this stuff about nanotechnology. Feynman wrote that. Richard Feynman, plenty of room at the bottom.
Yeah. James Van Allen was in part of the geophysical science committee as well. So all the Van Allen belt work,
This was actually a lecture on one of the first lectures on nanotechnology, and it happened in 1959. So that was right in the middle of Project Blue Book, which is interesting, But
so can you explain when you say Project Blue Book, because people have talked about it since the movie days, but what is it really? What do we know it is now?
Well, it was a U.S. Air Force study on UFOs that was Project Blue Book. So they had hired a number of scientists and stuff to look into UFOs, including a number of really skeptical scientists. An astronomer, J. Allen Hynek, was actually the scientific consultant of the project. And he came in very skeptical, was debunking things left and right. And he was finally at something where he came up with the swamp gas explanation for this one UFO sighting, and people just were laughed him out of the room for it. And that it was around that time that he kind of realized that he was just being, maybe he wasn't being open-minded enough to other explanations for some of these things. But it's interesting because the U.S. Air Force research on lasers and a lot of that technology didn't really start in that. They're not really consistent with this time period. There are some balloon technologies that go back to 1945, including the one I was trying to mention before about the Project Palladium. Where is it? Let me just look this up. Project Palladium. It's definitely on here. It's another Warzone article where it shows these freaking balloons, and I had it up, and then I don't know where that window went.
For a real quick second, one guy I was thinking of as important is Ernest Harry Vestine, not just because his son played for Frank Zappa's Mothers of Invention and Canned Heat, which is awesome, but because of his work on electromagnetism, which also was used for,
This is the one. All right, I'm going to share this in the chat if I can. I don't know if it will let me share that video. I mean, the link straight up, but did I?
It looks like it came from me.
I know.
I sent I'm cool.
Well, that's the link. I'm just posting it, but I think I can select that. It says all. I can now. Now I'm just commenting as alien scientists. Okay,
there it is. Interesting.
but I thought that it.
Oh, whoa! Look, watch this. I am Jeremy. I did it.
God,
I just stole your identity in front
totally
of
frame me.
it's just tons of people.
Type the Earth is spherical. I mean cubic.
Nobody believes you're spherical anymore. I'm just kidding.
So here's this balloon patent that dates back to 1945, granted in 1949. It's alarmingly similar in appearance to that video we showed. And objects that were described by these pilots, you know, so that's why.
Do you have that UFP live video again? Can you really quickly montage it just so I can see? Yeah, like look at that. I mean, at first you're like, okay, purple bubble, but you know now
you had like a translucent
model.
balloon, and you were shining like a black light or laser or something on it, you know, and it was one of these with
like a lighthouse has that weird reflector, like your headlights do. I mean, I can see
these are radar reflectors, and they're like, you know, so it's like a cube in a sphere, but
brilliant.
Maybe. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, go back to that model again. Let's see the shape of it, because I see exactly the cubic shape, but it's interesting the idea that isn't a square, right? It's a cube. So it doesn't have to be a polygonal cube. We don't know yet. You'd mentioned some other possible shapes, I thought.
Yeah, this is interesting. This shape right here. But this back to that article with the radar reflectors. I posted that link to that. That's a very interesting one. Let's listen to Ryan Graves' testimony real quick. And I'm gonna let's share screen, and let me see if I can get the audio on there.
There you go.
When we talked about the visual contact, when it buzzed by, it was very likely that was stationary, and you know we actually buzzed by it because we didn't know it was there. So it was likely stationary at that time, and it basically split our section when they were in tack wing. So it wasn't like it was trying to merge with us or it was making high-speed passes or anything like that. It was most likely stationary. We just didn't know it was there. Where this was, you know, at a time where we weren't even sure if they were real or not. Essentially, just kind of flew into it. When I say it was following us, I don't mean individual aircraft. I mean, wherever we were, they were there. So that could mean two things. That could mean they were already there, or they were following the strike group. They weren't following individual aircraft. And of course, at this point, we're like, okay, well, clearly this is nothing that we're used to seeing out there. So we submitted a safety report saying that there was an unidentified object in our working space, and we don't know what to do.
Unidentified Inside America's UFO Investigation. Friday, May 1st.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to get Mr. Douglas to do the UFO narration. He can do that voice so well. He's the best.
Nice.
I mean, so we've got basically a little thing here, though, because at first people are like, okay, what? There's a purple ball in the sky, and that's weird. But it could just be that my phone's acting up, or maybe it's fairies. I don't know.
Yeah, dude, I know. Aliens much more exciting than my gas bag explanation, right?
I don't know, though, because for me, I'm a big fan of UAPs and the idea, like season 5 of X-Files. I like it when we learn about the scientists and all this. I think it's good. We should know more. This is a weather balloon made out of graphene. Go on.
Well, these original ones were actually made of like a clear rubber, you know, or plastic and stuff. So it's super. I don't know. It's weird because then we have some interesting technologies. And then some of the testimonies kind of weird if you think about it. But
I've seen materials that you can heat up a side, and then because it radiates heat off of it, it'll push it in midair. So you could have a balloon with something inside of the balloon that heats up one of the sides, moving it different directions also. So, I mean, this could be useful for navigation. It might be beyond just radar blocking and jamming, but I can imagine it being, you know, there's so many ways you can use technology. This could be a very useful, practical, real world thing. And we're always like, oh, this is ET. And then we don't look into it. And that's, I think, another issue.
Yeah. I tend to think like, ET would be more like Star Trek, where they'd be just invisibly watching us and trying not to interfere at all and not be noticed
Yeah, right.
or give any intelligence or any information.
So they're telling us all the time. There's some out there. There's aliens. We're going to be hearing about all these aliens, but we keep instead seeing examples of human-made radical crafts. That's what I feel. Is that the vibe? What do you think?
Well, every time I go to declassification would be interesting because there are some, missing holes, as I pointed out, on the show. I was pointing out a couple earlier with Adam Krieger. I'll just go over those real quick.
Yeah.
In the literature, night null wire, it came from Naval Ordnance Research Labs, but there's some interesting history to it, believe it or not. I didn't believe it at first, and I was like, oh, it's just natural that they'd be experimenting with nickel titanium alloys and eventually figure out this 68% magic number or whatever it is. But I don't know, because there's a lot of research that went on into nickel titanium alloys that was issued in that. It's called the Second Progress Report by Battelle. Deep Secrets of a UFO Think Tank. Yeah, this might be it. And the memory metal. Yeah, so this was a UFO think tank, and they have these memory metals. Apparently, this it was like night null wire, but it was very fine threads of it that were woven into this nano fabric.
Nice.
That will form this memory material.
Wrinkle-free elven fleece. That's what we need. Yeah.
Yeah, like a wrinkle-free elven fleece. Yeah, that's almost exactly how I would describe it. That super finely woven of some strange metal, thread. But apparently this, you heat it up. You can basically take it. You heat it up and it returns back to its shape. So I think these things are these giant solar sails. And what are those wedge UFO videos? You ever seen the wedge?
Which one is that? Like this? Not the cigar. It's like a.
There's a whole bunch. Oh, I can't even find them. No, it's like a donut with a wedge.
Oh yeah. And it looks like a flying butt.
Right, it looks like this flying butt, and there's a whole bunch of them captured on like STS feeds. Like
I want to think of what's the thing that Lockheed has. Lockheed, it's like a turkey. It looks like a giant fat turkey that they have.
You're not gonna find these now, and there's a reason for that, because like they hide certain UFO videos, man, and they promote so much crap. It's so easily distracting. But yeah, it's those wedge it's like a donut UFO, and it's got like a wedge missing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way I think about it is like the UFO is actually that little black dot in the middle, and
right. And the field around it is produced by the
solar sail. No, it's a solar sail. I think it's like a solar sail made of this fabric, So if you were to make if you were to make the ultimate, like say you wanted to go out in deep space and there was very little sunlight and you needed to refuel, like if you built one of these light sails, you could reflect a whole ton of light into your and capture a lot more, you know what I mean, to be able to do something with. So that's kind of like my theory, and it's just it's just speculation, I guess. There's no evidence for this, but my theory is if you were to do this on a huge scale, it would look something like that, and it would have a wedge missing where this whole thing could retract. You heat it up and it go or whatever, and it goes, or you could just crinkle it, right, and it goes back to that. You crinkle it up in a ball, and then you heat it up when you need to expand it, and it just goes back to that shape.
Yeah, I can imagine what I was thinking about with the wedge, and what also with some of the saucers ideas, ionic breeze, ionic lifting. And so you've got a craft around the center craft, which is like an antenna, The entire donut part is the antenna for keeping up this ionic field. And then it has an XYZ from moving the center craft, which is in the center of that point. So similarly, but I like the solar sail idea because it kind of reminds me of a thought I had when I was looking at that purple thing, or at least the model for it, because it seems like if that could move based on insulatory radiation or being able to absorb heat or some kind of radio that could be used to actually maneuver. Stuff that we could build.
So in the process of going, the shockwave modification these are the nose cones that it's like an airplane nose cone. They mount these two lasers on the wings out here or on the tip of the missile, and they focus at this point of in front of the craft.
Oh,
and they blast it with so much radiation that it supercavitates the air and creates and it explodes and literally creates a vacuum in front of the aircraft, so it can suck the it can suck the air out in front of the craft. So if you want to get supersonic speeds, and you need to just reduce that airflow,
right? No friction. That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah, so this is what they came up with, and this is all the physics diagrams of. It's all right in here in this patent, and it's this guy Kevin Kremeyer. Number of interesting patents that he's done. One of them, what I thought was super interesting, is this laser-based flow modification to remotely control air vehicle flight path.
What?
So
if you had a bunch of these up in the sky, like you could have synchronous or geostationary objects.
Yes. Think about this with the balloon technology.
Yeah.
Right?
Keep them up.
If you had a balloon and you wanted to move it around and put it where you needed it to go, right? You just shine some lasers on it with this technology, and you could literally just like tractor beam manipulate.
That's amazing.
That would be crazy, because that would make for some creepy UFO sightings, because you'd see like the plasma around the orb and be like, what's
the name of this? Can we read that a little bit? Pegasus.
So that was just an interesting balloon satellite. I like to show this one when I talk about some of the secret balloon research. What was this
project supposed to be for? They make this Mylar.
Well, if you enjoyed GPS on your phone, this was one of the first this was one of the first satellites they used for determining,
But this is a low satellite because it's a balloon.
They bounce microwaves off of it and use the information to measure how the distance is, so they can map the Earth and figure out how to link up satellites to a geometric structure, like a grid structure on the Earth. So
not bad, but this is only like 500 miles up or something, or it's not like way up in space or anything like that.
It was pretty high, I guess. Let me see the apogee altitude. About 2,654 miles.
Dang, you can take a balloon 2,500 miles, everybody. That's the lesson here.
I don't know how they thrust augmented Thor. Okay, so they launched this thing up in a rocket out of Vandenberg Air Force Base in a Thor Agena 2 in 1966. And
it's like one of the. It's not a red, not that red style. The Agena 2. Hold on. Agena 2. The red. The after the V2. What was the first thing they came out with? It's like the red. The first rocket system. I was just looking into this the other day. Kevlov and Kellov in the Soviet Union had figured out a system that for the Smrska 7 that uses only like 4 rocket thrusts, but the American system based on the V2 had like 32, and their microcontrollers couldn't deal with it. Bless you. Until after they did in the 50s, they got MOSFET semiconductors. And that's a weird one too, because MOSFET is like 6 months or less after Roswell, New Mexico.
MOSFET?
Yes, the MOSFET semiconductor is crazy because it's like the Terminator chip, because it's made out of different kinds of silicon oxide alloys that they didn't have yet, right? And so for them to have to develop the materials even to make the thing was crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they know about p doped and n doped silicone silicone crystal structures and stuff, because that was all in Walter Schottky, and they had a lot of the theory on this and stuff. Julius Edgar Lilienfeld in 1925, he the basic principles of a field
the
effect
field effect.
transistor.
But requiring the special kinds of composite glasses that they weren't able to create yet. Is material sciences that really took off in World War II that made it possible. Unless it was alien. It's a fun story. I love Roswell. What do you think about? Okay, so real quick jump, because we were thinking about this earlier on Adam Krigler's Base AF. We talked a bit about the Majestic 12 thing. And so for people that haven't heard of it, it's the idea that at Roswell, without Truman knowing, they got these 12 scientists to go look at the alien paperwork, bogus. And it's but you got some cool names on here, right? Berkner, Vanderberg, Vannevar Bush, and every one of them said no aliens, and then they walked away with I have an idea. And so Vannevar Bush says, I don't believe that there were aliens there, but I do believe that I should patent microelectronic magnetic memory. Well, let's invent Memex and we'll build the internet. That's my new idea this month, right after Roswell. And then similarly, Menzel, right? Menzel said, I don't believe that there's any aliens there, but I have this new idea because I was looking at some sheep and they got a burr stuck in them. And I want to invent this new carbon steel hook and loop system called Velcro, right? Which is this crazy, if you've ever seen Velcro under a microscope, it's crazy. Just like space material. And it was, first use for space. So, but I wonder, because, you've always been good at breaking the bull from the truth. You don't really think, you don't buy into the MJ12, the Majestic 12, or what do you think? Is there any truth to that? What's the real truth about all that? What do you think?
I have a whole, let me find my presentation on Roswell. I'm
cool.
Open it up, because this is all in my, the Roswell thing, the Roswell file. Let's find this part. So there was a number of scientists that were hired, like Luis Alvarez. He was the balloon scientist on Project Mogul, which was later blamed for Roswell by the U.S. Air Force, right? And he was, very into educational outreach later in his career. A number of these other guys, like Frederick Clark Durant, secretary to the Robertson panel, and, massive UFO skeptic. Samuel Goudsmith, a physicist for Project Blue Book. He had jointly proposed the concept of electron spin in 1925 and worked at Brookhaven's National Labs in 1952. He was also very wrong about a lot of things. He had been part of this Operation Alsos in 1943 to 1945, and which did this Nazi atomic bomb assessment. And he claimed that the Germans weren't even close, when in fact the intelligence proves that they were. And he reasoned that a totalitarian state would inhibit science. Soviets developed the bomb soon after, right? So he was wrong about that too.
Yeah, not doing too well so far. 2 for 2.
Yeah. So, Project Blue Book, 1952 to 1969. But what was I going to say about these scientists? These are the guys. These are the guys that I think were involved.
Right.
Some of the guys that were, Loading was hired. He was a civil engineer, worked for Wright Patterson, and was hired to experiment with all the Air Force geometries, department, where he designed a number of saucer-shaped craft and tested them in wind tunnels and took data and did all that good basic engineering research on saucer-shaped craft to figure out, why flying saucers. But John von Neumann and Hermann Oberth, allegedly, he was von Braun's mentor and one of the Nazi scientists from Operation Paperclip brought over to start the, American rocket program, which would later warp into NASA or develop into NASA. He said, "It's my thesis that flying saucers are real and that they are spaceships from another solar system. I think they are possibly manned by intelligent observers who are members of a race that may have been investigating our Earth for centuries. I think that they possibly have been sent out of conduct systematic long-range investigations, first of men, animals, and vegetation, and more recently of atomic centers, armaments, and centers of armament production. They obviously have not come as invaders, but I believe their present mission may be one of scientific investigation." And that was in 1954 to the American Weekly. And interesting, perspectives for some of these guys. A trusted colleague of von Braun's, another one, Dr. Ernst Steinhoff, in 1947. They were allegedly group of paperclip scientists, and they chose paperclip scientists, for a reason, I think. And they were escorted to an area with the wreckage from the object, and they were. So this is what he all testified to. This is Dr. Ernst Steinhoff testified to all this. He said that this group was escorted to the area. The Americans wanted assurance that it wasn't of Soviet or other foreign countries' origin, and Steinhoff said it was not. They were instructed not to remove any material from the crash site. He said that he heard that some of the material was taken to an underground facilities at Wright Airfield, and he requested of Belsius that he never say anything until after Steinhoff, passed away. So, a lot of these guys left some interesting legacy and information.
Clearly the dude had sex with aliens. What else would be hiding?
Robert Sarbacher, very interesting physicist who allegedly was brought out to this, crash site and was one of the guys who looked at this alien technology. And his work, they had an interview with him from 1950, and there's some notes of that are very interesting for people to look up. And he also published a book on hyper and ultra-tech frequency engineering, and another book I think he published on excitons, which are laser physics, the key elements of which will be used in the laser physics of the the 60s, which developed those lasers that were eventually used and at the end of Project Blue Book with Project Outgrowth in 70 and 72. So yeah, dude, freaking the government's not going to disclose this stuff, so it's up to us to tell you everything and to put this research together, and it's very interesting. Von Neumann would have been another guy I would have picked for the team. And Manhattan Project physicists held the highest levels and security clearances of anyone out there on the Manhattan Project. Was the human computer. He could do calculations like nobody's business. And
Neumann's amazing. Neumann's one of the coolest people ever.
He was very interesting guy.
There's some films of him. I'm gonna see if I can find them, and sometime I'll put them on the channel of him just doing math on blackboards in front of people. There's like a good 20-30 minute video in black and white. I mean, high energy and cool.
He was like a robot, man. And he wrote a paper on self-replicating space probes in 1947.
And now we have 3D printers in space, bro. Yeah. Hey, go into the Neumann machines, because we were thinking about that earlier. That's a key.
Yeah, so there's von Neumann probes and a von Neumann probe.
The cooler name.
Yes, probes. What is a self-replicating spacecraft? The von Neumann probes. Also, these Bracewell.
Check out this picture also from Futurism on the idea. Like, it's very Hubbard. You know what I mean?
So Ronald Bracewell in a 1960 paper proposed that interstellar space probes dispatched for the express purpose of communication with one or more alien civilizations. So these are actually ones that are out to seek contact. And
I mean, you got to replace parts as you go, and you can literally make a machine like a 3D printer, and they've done this already. So there really are machines that can reprint and replace parts, and they can even grind down captured material and turn it to sand into glass, and then use that in the boards. So PCB boards can be made now. So it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, 3D printed.
But I mean, before that, 20 years ago, if you talked about the Neumann probe, which is a lot older of a concept, by the way, people thought it sounded crazy because they're like, that's just silly. Humans are the reproductive organs of machines, you know?
Well, it's just interesting because if he was brought out to Roswell, I mean, why would they let him publish that like a couple months later? That's also another question people have said, you know?
I
Well, maybe they're
mean,
just like
it doesn't
leaking little
matter.
bits out, leaking
Yeah.
little, you know, because it's completely of his own mind that he came up with that idea. So why not?
I mean, if a probe's got a herd intelligence from an AI, right, and it can replicate it's a body at that point. And so if the body is a sensorial automaton that can think for itself because it's plugged into the AI, then what they did really is say, hey, you guys worry about aliens while we talk about Cylons, because there's really AI that's existing. This is a lot bigger than just organic. This is a new argument. Dude, Neumann.
Yeah, this is interesting stuff. Then Bryce Dewitt, that other guy I talked about from the secret college there in North Carolina, published a paper on superconductors and gravitational drag, 1966, right towards the end of Project Blue Book, and that was when I think they started all that research into. They hired this guy named Henry William Wallace. I think they did it on purpose because he had the same name as. But he's from Valley Forge, PA.
Got Insight of the All Ages, $5. Thank you. Good chat here. I have several revelations recently. How about a roundtable I could host, or could be? Light is the render rate of reality. Hey, buddy, get up onto the Discord and hit us up. You know, we're always down to chat, and I'm pretty ridiculously open.
So I don't know if this is it. I don't think this is it. The inventions of
William Wallace, the brave.
Let's see, the inventions of Henry William Wallace. Yeah, Ether Laboratories. Yeah, this might be it. Not this guy. There's so many other people with that name. I think that's why they picked him, But he was working for GE, believe it or not, General Electric, and they were doing this gravity shielding and spin a nuclei and gravity magnetic shielding experiments that started. He was a scientist at GE Aerospace in Valley Forge, PA, and these are all the patents. So this is like early Podkletnov research, late 60s, not early, mid 70s until the mid 70s. That this was going on. So this is where it led to all those rumors of the TR3B with that magnetic, that mercury plasma that was rotated at high speed and allegedly created these, gravity fields.
Right. I mean, it's interesting because all of a sudden you have the introduction of solid state physics as a consumer electronic market for semiconductors starts to emerge. And so after supercapacitors, a bunch of supercapacitor guys go to Intel, go to IBM, and then build these wafer companies for solid state physics, and that's where you start to see really sprints in phaser, right? So if you're watching phaser lasers, micro nano lasers, nanoscopic laser, or photonics, because you have to move beyond electrons into photonics, then you start to see spectral solid state physics, and then there's a gravitational drag. All of a sudden makes sense. Because it has to do with, like you were saying, with the laser, there's actually a density and there's a lack of materials. It's a lot more significant on a small scale. If everything is gone, you can see all of a sudden it's a further torque.
So Einstein's field equations are basically that there's this metric tensor and there's this stress energy tensor. And the stress energy tensor is key. And one way you can get warping of the space-time field or the continuum, according to battle tested Einstein physics, is through creating warping in this stress energy tensor. And so what they were trying to do is rotate these this mercury at high speed to create and then electrify it, and something in there was creating this a warping of this stress energy tensor, and that's what a lot of the core research involves is figuring out ways to warp that stress energy tensor. So that's apparently what it's all about, according to the physicists that I've talked to that are on the top of their game with this. and it's like it's like a matrix of vectors. Basically, is what a tensor is. It's a matrix full of vectors.
Yeah, waves work with tension physics as well. And a tensor plate, you can have tensor plate lattice crystals, but they even have the idea of vaporous crystal now. So the idea that there are plasmoidal tensions that are tensor lattices that can affect each other. And there you go. Then you can look into sp2 orbitals or something and see that.
Yeah. Yeah. What is this? Tensor plate.
Probably
is a centrifuge for a lab.
Yeah.
It's like a lab centrifuge for separating liquids at different densities.
So you talked a bit on Adam's Base AF. We were talking a bit about, if there's alien crafts that have landed, it's not necessarily just Roswell. There's also the idea of like whatever the Vatican might have hiding. You want to like elaborate a bit on that idea of there could be lots of other stuff before 1947,
Well, I mean, yeah, 1947, like there was a number of incidents. I mean, we have the whole Muslim religion that's based around the Black Rock, right?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to deny. Yeah, a meteorite religion in a lot of ways. I feel like it's not introduced that way enough. It's a good ice-breaking pitch. And the Vinahas, right? All the flying dervishes in the Veda and the Bhagavad Gita, the Indians have that. But the Catholic stuff, like the CIA kind of stole the idea of wearing black from the Jesuits. And the Jesuits were going all around the world getting all their stuff. Like, what do you think that they might have? I mean, everyone's religion has to do, it seems like, with the Japanese emperor's sword comes from the heavens, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think they just stole a bunch of ancient alien relics or something like that? Or what do you think it is?
Dude, there's lots of cases like that. Like King Tut's dagger was found to be made of meteoric iron.
Right? That's huge.
You could look that up. That was like super, like, wow. They here it is. Tutankhamun's meteoric iron dagger.
Dang.
So they obviously knew there's something special about, rocks that fell from the sky. If one of the most famous, ancient kings is buried with one.
Right.
Yeah,
man, that's crazy. That must have been a heavy thing too, because meteorite's pretty heavy a lot of time. Solid iron.
That's super interesting. But I believe that anything that they knew came from something, and they try, think about like the priests. If they had something that they couldn't explain, an artifact, it would either get destroyed or it would get whisked away, or so many things got lost, like the Ark of the Covenant we were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. People getting radiation poisoning from religious icons, or that's pretty trippy. Or whatever it is, if it's like electric shock. Literally, some people said if they touched it, they could die, or they would die, just instantly get shocked and die. What do you think the Ark of the Covenant has in it?
It might have been early electricities or something, because they were the Baghdad batteries,
super capacitors. Yeah,
you just hooked up a whole bunch of Baghdad batteries together. They found that clay pot with the iron in the copper. So they know that the ancients at least knew about, they could put grape juice in these clay jars and just use an iron tube with this an iron cathode with this this copper cathode with an iron anode.
Did you see the beta voltaics that they have coming out right now? These like new nuclear batteries, so they have carbon, so they have salt from a reactor that's been ionized and radiated, and then they put it into these tiny batteries. I don't know if I can find
they show this. They have like this light bulb and stuff, and like they link a bunch of Baghdad batteries. There's all this theories that they had this stuff. They have this insulated caps and stuff. All this
Check this
Oh,
out.
this is debunked, huh?
This salt battery should literally be able to you shake it and it breaks apart and charges itself because of the radiated salt from the reactor that's inside of it. So you could have these AA batteries that last thousands of years, or could be replaced car batteries.
Oh, so there's people saying it's been debunked too, like that there was no Baghdad battery, and then it's that these archaeologists made it up to get.
Well, I mean, they did make
Right.
one in order to show that it could be done, but I'm pretty convinced that the Baghdad battery is real. And another example, there's other Baghdad batteries from other places. Japan has one. There's, or at least several, I think, right? I don't know. There's some stories there. I don't know if it necessarily means alien though either, because Baghdad battery just could be technology that they had at a certain time, kind of isolated example.
So just think, like, if you were just an outsider among the group and you wanted to, hey, let me just show these guys something stupid, like we'll just here.
Some people say the idea of like a Baghdad battery being used for electrolysis to plate metal on gold, like gold plate, cheaper iron coins or something. That makes a lot of sense. You wouldn't tell people, because then you would be trying to keep that secret that you know how to put a thin layer of gold on your coin,
Yeah. Electroplating. Interesting. They figured out electroplating. Like, if you had like knowledge from the gods and you wanted to get rich, that would be a way to do it, man. You could just take a whole bunch of coins and just electroplate them with gold.
Put your face on it, right? Yeah. But okay, so like there's two major questions I wanted to ask you. I think I already asked the first one, which is about, Roswell, but there's another thing that's always on my mind recently, and that's Project Camelot. And I know it's as hyper conflated with people saying, "Oh, I saw this movie while on drugs, and I think that movie was about me." I think that's basically what a lot of the stories are. People that think that they
You mean Carrie Cassidy's Project Camelot, or this other?
I mean the idea more literally of the government.
The 1964, counterinsurgency study.
Well, I think that I broaden it to both. What do you think of the idea that in 1964, we had the atomic World War III with Kennedy in one timeline, and then you have these guys saying that they're Corey Good and David Wilcock or whatever.
Kennedy was assassinated in 63.
Right, but in the other timeline, see, Morton Downey Jr. was a president in the 80s, and there was fallout from the nuke wars. I don't know. I'm just saying, you've heard all this stuff. What do you think? Do you think that there are parallel dimension soldiers? Is the military pulling submarines into parallel dimensions to fight wars? Are we dealing with this stuff right now? Is any of this stuff real? What do you think?
I think there's a lot of counterintelligence that goes on. So I don't know. I'm not familiar with all this stuff, so I haven't had the time to investigate. I just know that, Carrie Cassidy is not very good at vetting sources or asking deep questions, and she gets a lot of attention for, these ridiculous, boisterous claims without any evidence. But as I say, a lie will travel around the world 10 times before the truth has the time to put its shoes on. So that's tends to spread like wildfire, even for the entertainment purposes of the people that just like want to laugh at it.
Right. Well, okay, but there's so many people saying aliens are feeding Apple technology or something like this. Do you think, on what level of truth is it, you think that there are people or there are corporations or states interacting with aliens of higher technology? That's do you think that that's real? Are we interacting? Is somebody interacting?
Well, Bigelow tried to get access to the materials, wasn't wasn't given that clearance and wasn't given the contracts vested into. There was a rumor here that he stored UFO materials in the buildings in Las Vegas for a brief period of time, but I don't know that that's not the original. I don't trust TexasUFOsightings.com. There's an original article out here about this, and it was right from Bigelow and stuff, and it talked about this, but it was from another more credible source than this. But anyways, he had set up a place to get access to those. So there's a number of people who might have, and there's allegations, of course, that Teflon, the real story of Teflon and polytetrafluoroethylene polymers. Is very boring, but it's much more interesting to say, oh, Teflon came from aliens, you know? But
is this it here? I think I found Bigelow says aliens right under people's noses, and then he's got the BICS, Bigelow Institute for Conscious Studies. Is that the guy?
but there's one of these polyfluoroalkyl substances called PFAS that not a lot of people know about, but it's I know about it because it's used in a type of fire retardant foam that certain fire stations use, and they used them to put out a fire that was in a neighborhood, and it poisoned all the well water with this PFAS chemical. They found out later that this causes cancer and it's super dangerous and has higher blood pressure during pregnancy,
what is
thyroid
PFAS?
problems, damage to your immune system. It's a chemical that is in. It's a type of Teflon, and it was in a lot of Teflon pans. So
the P is they put
this stuff out, and
is
people
it polyfluoro? Is it like a fluorine? Is that the F?
You might even still be cooking with a PFAS Teflon pan if you're not careful. So you have to look up the manufacturer of your pan.
Oh yeah, it is it's a polyfluoroalkyl.
This is terrible, terrible stuff, and they put it in cookware. So people are literally cooking with this and putting it into their bodies and killing themselves. Not everyone's aware of it, and it's not like there's public service announcements or educational plans to recall all these pans that are poisoning people or educate them about it. But it's one thing I think is worth mentioning to my audience, since we're on the subject of Teflon and Teflon science. Things you should know.
TFE and PFAS apparently. Brutal.
But brutal stuff. But yeah, this I don't know, Project Camelot. What do you have any specific questions about?
What's that movie with Schwarzenegger on Mars, right? And he goes back and forth, and his life is like Total Recall. What do you believe? What do you think about Total Recall?
I love
How real is that? How real is Total Recall? I feel like it's real. What do you think?
Well, I hope that someday in the future they will genetically engineer a woman to have 3 boobs.
Yeah, for sure.
But
it's like
everyone knows that scene of the 3 boob chick.
In the next 30 years, 20 years even, it's coming.
Oh, and he has the freaking guy that's growing on his chest. That was the weirdest part. But
he doesn't remember that he is on a mission for this government or corporation, and so then they put him back in a boring retirement, basically, because he's not on the mission. But do you think that there is a simultaneously to our kind of boring Twitter presidential reality that there's something like this going on?
That there's a agent, what's his name, and working at the post office.
Dude, there could be people on Saturn right now, people from the 70s on Saturn. We don't know. I don't know. I'm not convinced we're not. I don't know.
I don't know. That's some weird.
These guys talking about it seem pretty crazy. So that's why I wonder, do you think there's any kind of truth to that?
None of that scene.
I think you're missing my point. Yes, the movie's amazing, but do you think that aliens and humans are do you think there's something there? Do you think there's an interaction that's going on? Or are we literally just all still in this, they're not paying attention to us yet, we're looking for hello aliens? So we're just screaming into the night sky?
Sometimes I wonder, because it's is it just human stupidity, or are they literally in control and totally misleading us to purposely
They Live, right?
I don't know.
That movie, They Live.
I wonder sometimes if there aren't bad aliens, actors that are just posing as people and doing stuff to interfere with the planet and the natural ecosystem and evolution of humankind. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, exactly. You look at terraforming.
That would surprise me less than I would actually be more surprised if we found a tunnel system on Mars that, with the alien handprint that we push and it turns it releases all the oxygen and turns Mars back into a habitable planet, like happens in the end of Total Recall.
It's a good button there. Yeah. Very Jodorowsky's Dune. It was a good idea.
Not to spoil the end of the movie for everybody who hasn't seen it.
But that idea that Earth and Mars are different times or something, that we're living in these parallel realities, looking at different things.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Ancient Martians froze the atmosphere and underground and for a later time, and that's the release button that he found. And yeah, right.
I mean, yeah, super sci-fi, super comic book, but I'm less and less inclined to believe that there's just no interaction. It just seems more and more like we're on a schedule now of stuff. And maybe it is just that we're getting like gradual disclosure. You know, do you think gradual disclosure is really happening, or is it just complete misdirection?
We'll find that out because one of the guys I mentioned, I didn't get to mention this because there was so much going on in that chat that I got cut off. But
Oh, word, yeah.
Dr. Gary Nolan, he had recently. Let me find his tweets on Twitter because it was Gary Nolan, scientist. I'm just going to say whistleblower. Because he was talking about these whistleblowers that are allegedly coming forward. I don't know if it was him, but Gary Nolan says he knows that whistleblowers are coming out to reveal there was a UFO, a cover up about UAPs and crash teams and all this. So he said there's members of people that he's talked to that said they were on the crash teams and they're willing to come forward. And we'll see if, see what happens with those people, if they turn out to be credible or not, or what comes of that. I can't find the actual statement from Dr. Gary Nolan saying that now, but there's been a lot of hype on UFO Twitter. If you look this up in this small circle of people talking about disclosure, disclosure was actually trending on my Twitter not too long ago. But there's been a number of people talking about this group that was involved in these UFO crash recoveries, or the retrieval teams at least, who are going to come forward. And allegedly in American Cosmic, Gary Nolan was one of the scientists. It's not mentioned that he was talked about the scientists that were involved in this program. They're approached by the CIA to analyze some of these UFO materials. And then it later came out that Gary Nolan was one of those researchers. And this is the guy I'm talking about. He's one of the most interesting players in the mainstream scientific community. I mean, the mainstream UFO field of ufology, who's actually doing some effort to really educate and
Is that him with
talk about the
Fauci?
science.
Oh,
Is that him with Fauci?
I hope not. Was that him?
No.
Oh, okay. That never looks good. Those photos, any photo anyone has with any Ussie with Fauci is not going to age well.
Yeah, but he's actually an immunologist, which is interesting, and he's making a pro Fauci post, so he's real pro Fauci.
That's so. What do you think about that? So there's so many
interesting.
people that are super brilliant, but they've got something really not super brilliant about them. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think? So many people that can talk to you about science, but then politics is just like,
I don't know, that because that more doesn't that strikes me more as a political post than a scientific post,
right?
Because it's just, I don't know, because he's a very controversial figure in this whole thing.
Stick to your field, Yeah.
Well, he is a
Yeah.
immunologist. He's a cancer bioimmunology and biocomputation, and I think he's Nobel laureate. I don't know if he won a Nobel Prize, but he's a Nobel laureate for some of his groundbreaking work in that field. But maybe him stepping outside his field to be involved in this. But he was one of the people apparently the CIA approached to use equipment to look into these materials, which they thought were alien. And he talks a lot about those, and actually his work with Jack Valet, who's went to he's been investigating UFO crash sites and going to crash sites and collecting data, including metals and stuff like that. So he had a number of samples that he gave to Gary Nolan, and so he said a few of them were scientifically interesting, and a little bit perplexing, and that there were reasons that he believed that he might be looking at something that was engineered beyond a level that we're currently capable of. But he didn't give really many details about why he thought that, or how he came to that conclusion, or the evidence for that conclusion, which got a couple people a little bit upset about with him for that. But hopefully this will clarify, and we'll see what happens with these colleagues. I want to find the post with him where he's mentioned that there was going to be whistleblowers coming forward to talk about these UFO debris, because that would be the real deal. If we had UFO debris and actual, something to look at where we could say, well, holy crap, it's like a cheat sheet, It's like sending an iPhone back to the Romans.
I always wonder though about sometimes when a whistleblower is coming forward, the use of the word whistleblower, it kind of infers to me that maybe they're saying aliens because they're not allowed to talk about the Russians or China, because this might be some military or corporate paramilitary craft or something the government has, picked up in reconnaissance and they're not supposed to talk about, but it turns out to be more important. I mean, how much of the time is it that they're just hiding the fact that this is espionage, not even aliens? But do you, and also do you think this is a lot of time really something?
Yeah, because historically, I guess that you can look back to the CIA admitted it was us. There was this there was this article released by the CIA. It was on. I think you can still find the tweet about it on Twitter, where they admitted that we're declassifying all the UFO stuff, and here's all the Project Skyhook flight logs and all the test flights for all these secret programs of the Ox Cart and the U-2 spy plane, and it was these high altitude flights, and these were the traverse angles that you can trace back, and they declassified this whole big file of all these UFO sightings from the 50s and the 60s, and they said it was us. And they said that they also said that there was a lot of UFO misinformation put out to
Right.
So yeah, the CIA, it was us, CIA on UFOs. So it was us. There's the tweet, and they put out this whole story that all these UFO sightings were really secret CIA programs, and that they used aliens as this cover story to.
Then why would they tell you that now if it don't broke, why fix it? I mean,
Yeah.
they
So then why say that? I think this was like a weird premonition about. I think they did it, as a.
Oh, because real aliens were about to be sighted. And like, if you see any aliens, it's really just dudes in vans.
It's weird to think about all this. But again, it's just where's the evidence, and I look for the when you talk about information, data, and actionable intelligence, and how to sort that out on this what's called the intelligence pyramid. Is it pyramid?
Information, data, and actionable.
Yeah, call this. Yeah. So this is one version of it, right? So you get all the data. That's just all the flow of crap. And then you get actual information that you can extract from that data, and from that you can extrapolate on knowledge once you put enough of that together. And then at the top is your wisdom, or your actual, what we call intelligence, or actionable intelligence. It's things that you can actually act on or work on or do anything about. Unlike the alleged rumors of alien bodies that have been at Wright-Patterson since Roswell. They can't really do anything with that or do anything about that. So we just have to work with what we can work with and what we do have, which is tons of declassified documents on the science. More, stuff that people want to research, classified physics and stuff. There's a plethora of resources, including if you want to go through the bibliographies and go real deep. This really gets into it when you go into the DRD reports and you look up what the top scientists are looking into with regards to these programs, and who they hired and who was working on what, and because that gives you some insights about who's still working on what. And I know because I've talked to a number of these scientists, and they're bound under NDAs until the future dates. So they work for private corporations, a lot of them, and they're bound under NDAs from talking about their work. So people talk about disclosure and that the government's going to disclose all this. It's like, well, what does the government really know? I mean, they've proven that they really don't know shit. In fact, the people from the Pentagon that they've hired, who are supposedly, the well-educated experts in this, like, I would put them to shame with what I know beyond them about what's in these documents and what's in the science and the scientists who worked on what when, because they're not even brought up to speed on that. They're not even aware of it. They're not even briefed on any of it. It's so outside of the government, because it's all in these private corporations under NDAs. So how is the government going to have access to any of that kind of stuff? They have very little. They get these intelligence reference reports, which they get tidbits from the scientists who are, deeply involved and immersed in the fields, who write these, reports and these intelligence summaries for, the defense establishment, DIA and DARPA. But they really don't have the. I mean, this is where the intelligence is, but you got to understand, it's disclosure is not that easy. This a lot of this disclosure has already happened. All this stuff's declassified. It's already out there on Black
Not everything
Vault.
needs to be declassified. A lot of this stuff is like intellectual property. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's closed down by a corporation keeping it private. It's like car companies. Do you ever see how hard they work to hide what they're doing from each other, even though they work with each other? That's the model.
That's what's going on. So you got to think about all these corporations that are trying to get this technology. They're all hungry for this technology and desperate for it. And they don't want to reveal information or, talk too much about, their systems or how they work. And they have to, these intelligence summaries get written, and they have a lot of direct, equations and everything about how to engineer and build this stuff. So it does get out. It has gotten out. It's just like people screaming for disclosure, and they don't even have the education level to understand what they're looking at, here. So it's just like, I guess maybe you want disclosure. It's part of it's about education. It's about, how much time you got, because it's out there. It's just how much time you got.
Really I mean, Arthur C. Clarke, Neumann, they talk so much about the future, the 2001 Space Odyssey kind of future that was imminent. I mean, but it feels like it's imminent because it's already there. And then all of a sudden we have people competing with each other. Do you think that we're far away? I mean, like you seem to believe, Falcon Research, you're doing your work. Do you think it's happening in your lifetime, right? Or what?
I go back and forth on this all the time. Has it already happened? And are they hiding it? Because what are some of these sightings out there? Not the ones they're putting in the mainstream media. I think all those are our own technologies. But some of the stuff that's out there on the underground that does leak out from time to time that you don't see. Some of the more interesting UFO cases, I guess. There could be aliens. There could be aliens. I'm not ruling out that hypothesis. There's so many cases that I looked into, and I found there's secret technologies, like, and you combine these secret technologies and stack them, and you get some pretty amazing, high-tech stuff that they could do, and with some capabilities that people might not be aware of in the public domain. But we're trying to make do what we can to educate people on these technologies and bring this information out of the woodwork.
I love this. The amorphous metals. It's so crazy. Like it's straight up Terminator,
There's some interesting metals like that work more like Terminator metals, actually. That would be like not the glass alloys, but these. It's like a eutectic metal that's like half liquid, half solid. Works like a slush. So that might be somewhere in the future. This Daniel Shechtman's interesting that he did his postdoc at Aerospace Research Labs at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in '74, and then he went on to discover quasi-crystals a number of years later, but he might have gotten the insights for some of this stuff through things that he saw or worked on at Wright-Patterson. I just thought it was interesting that the guy who discovered quasi-crystals worked at Wright-Patterson, and then quasi-crystals were mentioned by Ed Fouché, the former Area 51 employee that talked about a lot of these programs he heard about with these that rotating mercury plasma and then the centrifuge with the TR3B and all that stuff, So he heard rumors about that kind of stuff when he worked out there in the late 70s and early 80s. So that was some of his information. He may have some interesting contacts and people that he knew, including Hal Puthoff, who I think is Gerald in his book, and we talked a little bit about that in some of the other episodes, and we'll talk about that later.
It's
too.
interesting looking at quasi crystals, and you also listed glassy metal composites, which is an interesting thing in nanotechnology. Glassy metal composites usually have something like silver nanowires inside of a silica gel, right, which allows for whatever sort of structure that you're trying to grow, but you need to have a certain kind of way to grow the lattice, so it's whatever style you want to grow. So if you have quasi crystal lattice glassy metals, you know, the dielectric, amorphous dielectric qualities are amazing, and you could use it like a diode, a metal diode, and that could be, you know, that's the future.
Yeah, they already said there was a study done at Princeton where they made a scale model and they'd use microwaves, this microwave horn antenna, and they showed that, you know, the diffraction pattern, it bounced at 90-degree angles without losing any signal quality at all. You know, they could bounce signals off these. So if you want to make a junction in fiber optics, you can do away with, you know, the bend radius in fiber optic cables. You know?
Oh, so there's an interesting thing there, because with light through glass, you know, so you're talking about photonics, especially, you're losing a certain amount of absorption in the insulatory quality of glass. But if you can move it to quasi-crystal glassy metal, then the metal is able to have a dielectric quality that will hold that charge and shouldn't lose it. So you shouldn't need to have as many repeaters, and you shouldn't have as much loss of signal carry.
Well, that's going to lead into the next era of technologies, which we want to get into, entanglement and long-range entanglement, and having trillions of entangled photons inside of your quasi-crystal that are flowing at a synchronized rate. And then you can alter that rate so that it literally controls the flow of the space-time, which around your craft, which I believe the space-time itself, what is space-time really? I talk about this because Stephen Wolfram wrote this article, and one of the leading mathematicians in 2015, you know, wrote this article on what is space-time and what are the theories of how space-time is generated. And my whole theory on space-time is that it's generated through photonic interactions, that the photons or the bosons of light are actually the mediators or creators of the space-time itself. And that by altering a lot of flow of photons or the paths of this light, that we can alter literally alter the structure of space-time if you warp that flow of the flow of light. So that's my whole theory, and I'm just waiting to get into this whole business of building these metamaterials, which trapping and light, you know, trapping light and being able to trap tons of light and then pump, you know, get a synchronized coherent structure of trillions of atoms in this resonant cavity in these Helmholtz resonators. We're going to build like a cavity, but more one shaped like a UFO, and get enough photons trapped in there. I think there's also maybe some sonic coupling that happens too, where you can get like a light sound coupling. There's some interesting things that happen in these in certain systems with phononic and photonic vibrations and some of these materials. So I'm thinking about a surface of this material, which is similar to these bosonic lasers. And yeah, this is a good one. If you go and view this page, this is a good article right here that talked about this with this. I have that somewhere. I'll have to find it, but this is from the same. This is from the same paper. I know it. How come it won't let me go to it? Oh, right here. It's not letting me do it. Anyways, you can find some of these papers on bosonic lasers that talk about this stuff. They're basically a new type of laser, which I think is it's inherent in the structure of the crafts. So you can build a metamaterial in the structure of your craft and then pump it, and it will actually generate
How are they?
lasers.
Are you saying that they really have okay, so the idea of a boson isn't, so it's like condensating is a condensate of particles, right? I think is the idea. So are we saying we're there? Are we doing boson production? Are we condensing particles?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're entangling particles and they're trying to get qubits going and quantum computers. And I think that literally what we're going to learn is that the entire surface of these UFOs are the real UFOs. If they're alien craft, then the entire surface of their craft is an optical quantum computer, which can warp the space-time through optical pumping of these polariton lasers.
Polariton lasers. That's good.
Yeah, the polaritons are interesting because, they all talk about this whole idea of negative mass and how we're going to create you need negative mass in order to create a warp drive, it's in this whole, all the theoretical physics that talk about artificial wormholes or building warp drives. And if you read the U.S. Air Force papers and some of the theories on how they can build this and create negative mass, they mention, polariton, condensate, and squeeze states.
Dang.
Which is interesting because this is where we benefit from the deep dives.
Yeah, let's go hard for a second. What is a polariton? Quasi particles. Let me just I'll pull the quasi polariton. Quasi particles resulting from strong coupling of electromagnetic waves with an electric or magnetic dipole carrying excitation. They are expression of the common quantum phenomenon known as level repulsion. Level repulsion.
Yeah. So if you want to create negative energies or, do some weird quantum effects, if you get like enough of your, if you get like a whole laser plasma state in the whole, surface of your craft going, and then you squeeze one of those dimensions. So use this Heisenberg uncertainty principle, and you squeeze this momentum vector, so you can that the momentum is. What the momentum is to a degree with above h bar over 2. What happens is you make this position thing go crazy, so your quantum position actually will jump. So you can exploit this phenomena quantum mechanically to actually make your position uncertain enough over h bar over 2, so that you trick the quantum vacuum into thinking that you're at least it's into being uncertain about your actual position. So if you can trick the quantum vacuum and you can condense your entire craft to a single wave structure and then trick the quantum vacuum into where you are positionally.
Well, then you're a magician.
Well, then you're, creating warp drives and wormholes. Right,
but that it doesn't seem nearly as impossible as it did 5 minutes ago. I mean, honestly,
no, this is battle-tested physics.
Compounded with the laser to create a vacuum space ahead of you. We have the tech to do most of this. That's wild.
Well, this is the tech, and you know what? There's a 1994 Hal Puthoff lecture. And in that 1990, this is the one on vacuum energy. And you got to find the extended version, the full 30-minute version. And there's a part where he talks about a breakthrough that happened in 1984. And it's so interesting that I looked up what he could possibly be talking about. What breakthrough happened in 1984 that he could be talking about. And I think that the one he's talking about is this breakthrough that happened at Rochester, New York, upstate New York. There's a Rochester University is where they have a big optics lab where a lot of really interesting research went on and still goes on. But there in fall 1985, based on research that they were doing, starting in 1984, they had this, they made the first squeezed light. They optically squeezed light doing this. So I think this was the breakthrough that he was talking about.
Interesting.
Because this gets into the core physics of it, and this happened 30 years ago, and they've been doing research into this.
Yeah, that makes sense. When did they change the rules for the speed of light? The new definition, I I think that is like 84, 86 that they changed the definition of the speed of light.
Yeah,
Right? You know, because you can change light
I'm not
speed.
sure if that was related to this research. I'll have to look into that, though. That's
No idea.
curious.
It does seem like interesting to me, at least, that light speed has been considered this constant, and it's not. It can be controlled. You know.
Yeah, so that's the whole basis of this warp drive theory, is that you have this thing called variable speed of light, and that's the way around the Einstein's battle tested physics that says, oh, you can't break the speed of light, so you can't travel faster than the speed of light, because, well, what if you change the speed of light? Then
So
you can
what do
travel
you
faster than it.
What do you think about? I don't know. Like, it's a little too Newtonian, but the idea of corpuscular perturbation of mass being kind of a bead of effect. So it's not that there's actually one singular light. It's a domino effect of light being created for instances. Do you think that that's a truth, or do you think it's really a singular light?
So wait, say this again.
Is light a domino effect of perturbation on mass, like so matter being affected, or is it literally a singular light that is traveling?
Yeah, so there's different types of waves. I think there's different types of light, because light's just an electromagnetic wave. So there are types of light which are transverse, in contrast to longitudinal waves, which are like pressure waves or sound waves, right?
Which we experience more, like it's hard to experience in a vacuum sound wave because it needs to hit something to be affected. Is that right?
Yeah, so electromagnetic waves are transverse waves. Sound waves are longitudinal waves. But there are types of this circularly polarized waves, and there's also scalar waves, which are time polarized waves. It's this whole idea of the scalar fields that are created. But again, this is all in the near field, far field. So near and far field is just, people need to understand this Fresnel region, which separates the radiative from non-radiative regions, and then the far field is things that are engineered to actually transmit, like antennas or transmitters and stuff. So a lot of electronics will emit a lot of like the inductors are this coils inside of your electronics. They'll emit a field, but that field is reabsorbed by the electronics, so it's only near field. So there's a whole discussion about these, that you don't actually need far field effects to warp space-time or build these spaceships. You only need near field effects, which warp the space-time locally and change that perception of how the light travels through the or the way the light coordinates through your object to figure out the universal positioning or structure of how everything is. And this goes back to like the mirror on the moon. There's a mirror on the moon, and there's a laser laser experiment, right, that they used. So one of the first Apollo missions, they put this reflector at the moon, and then they set up this whole thing called the lunar laser ranging experiment, where they actually used wavelengths of laser light to measure the distance accurately from the Earth to the moon. So it just shows you that the structure of space-time is a metric which is measurable using light and optics. So it's an optical phenomenon, and I think that's a key thing, because if we can use it
so the optical phenomena that's what I mean. Is that actually light, or are we thinking of the wave as light, and really light is affecting mass, and we're seeing it as luminance, which might be separate?
Well, this is the whole idea. Is you mentioned mass, so light. How do you have gravity, emergent gravity from electromagnetism? And there's a whole bunch of theories on that that involve this, entanglement theories of gravity, which say that, that as this entanglement, re-entanglement, and disentanglement occurs in the natural flow of quantum processes, that this gravitational force is emergent out of the that basically, that there's more gravity pulling you to Earth because there's more photons in the Earth that are interacting with your body than there are above your head. And that photonic interaction and the entanglement and breaking of the entanglement over time creates a flow of gravity which pulls you to Earth. It literally delineates the distance measurement between you and what's beneath you, so that you're constantly falling at a given acceleration.
Hey, electromagnetic induced entropy is a better explanation for gravity than most have given me. So,
this is the interesting part: is if you can entangle the photons in your craft and get them and break that entanglement, then you might be able to break gravity. And that was the theory that I proposed in 2018 and that I've been wanting to look into for a while now.
Yeah, we gotta break gravity. It's just gravity's what's keeping us down, man. Gravity just keeps us all down.
Actually, Ken Griggs proposed it first, and I helped him, get popular and promote that idea.
Duly noted. Very humble.
I just want to give him credit for the
that's fair. But get it done. Someone's got to. It's good to have the idea and get it out there. And I think the more people hearing this right now that are looking into science, it's like so many people are this is a hoax, this is fake, and they don't bother to look into the real data that they could use to literally fly.
Well, that's what we're looking into, and if we can crack this code and figure it out in a lab, then we'll be moving somewhere, and not just sitting here arguing over blurry, grainy videos for the next 10 years. You know what I'm saying?
Flying saucer, yeah.
Let's play that video one last time on the Twitter UAP
live.
Yeah, UAP live. It was UAP live.
There he is.
There he is. Again, we'll be arguing over videos like this for the next 10 years. Again, I showed Travis Taylor's email. He's one of the top scientists out there. He's saying that he thinks it's a square or octagonal shaped aperture and bokeh effect of a point source light at a distance. He's almost sure that it's that because of, some equations and some math that he mentioned that we attempted to dig a little into, but I really need a little more help or a better textbook. I'll look that up and hopefully have some more information in the next thing for you, because I'm gonna be interested in it.
I look forward to hearing that, and we got to do this again too. I love this whole back and forth. This is a good vibe. So
this is great because we can reach out to this community and let them know that the scientists are listening. We are interested and we are talking about the subject, and we're trying to get more people involved and interested. And if more kids out there knew that there's all this classified science and all this crazy technology out there, then I think a lot more people would go into this field or go into scientific research, because you'd be like, wow, I can get recruited into these programs and these are the people working on them, and this is how it all happens, and I could do this, and I could totally become this. If for the people that are curious enough and are interested in this, they could totally do this as your career, and there's a need for those types of people. That's what I'm hoping to promote and hoping to get out there and train the next generation of scientists to look deeper into this stuff, because we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to get anywhere into this future or that dream of getting somewhere if we're just thinking inside the same old boxes and thumbing our noses at anyone who thinks differently from us, our new ideas. We're only going to get further if we can explore and work together, and no one's as smart as all of us together. So I appreciate this community and the great information that we get. So
dude, yeah, powerful guys. I hope that you guys take the time to also subscribe to each other's channels. If you're watching Jeremy right now on my channel, go over to Alien Scientist, subscribe. We should have done this at the beginning. We could have had everyone watching both videos at the same time to double our my bad. We'll do that next time. But if you're also on Alien Scientist, jump over to Andreas Xirtus and give me a subscriber too. That'd be great. I'd love it. I appreciate you guys, and thanks for being here.
This one's the super interesting one, is the squeezed vacuum state. where you can get these position. You get the momentum vector nailed down so that your position vector is just going to go off the tunes, and that would launch you very far using quantum mechanics. So there's macro scale effects, meta atoms. You can look up quantum scale, macro scale quantum effects that occur in these
For kids.
plasmas, meta atoms, and meta surfaces. Very interesting papers and literature out here on this. Again, really cool stuff to look into for everyone who's interested. Thank you all for watching, and have a good night. I'm going to end the stream as well.
See you guys later, man. Peace.